Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the AAPI Leadership Lab brought to you by NAP Las Vegas. And today we have another special guest, Mr. Adam Miller. He is the Vice President and Assistant General Manager at Caesars Palace. Thank you, Adam, for taking the time for joining us today.
Thanks for allowing me to spend some time with you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this, and I'm just going to jump right in. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And what was life like growing up as Adam?
Great. Well, I was pretty much raised in Jackson, Michigan my entire life. I was adopted from South Korea when I was 6 months old and lived in the middle of Michigan ever since. I lived in this really quiet rural part of Michigan, had wonderful, loving parents who still support me through this day. And I always knew that I wanted to live somewhere warmer. After living in Michigan and the snow, sleet, hail, and the rain, I realized that I was destined to be somewhere warm. So that naturally progressed me to study hospitality and either decide I wanted to work at Disney or I wanted to work in Las Vegas. And after a really great trip here in my 7th grade to see Celine Dion, funny enough, here at Caesars Palace, I came through the town and realized all the great dining and shows and big pools when you're that age were really, really cool, and knew I wanted to eventually move out to Las Vegas.
That's crazy. So as a 7th grader, you chose Las Vegas over Disney. That my wife would have something to say about that. But even before that, because that's super cool that you actually had that trip in 7th grade and kind of knew what you wanted to do. But even maybe before that, what was the dream before you kind of decided on that? As Adam is maybe like elementary school, wants to be a doctor, a firefighter, whatever. What was the dream for you?
Yeah, when I was younger and going through school, there wasn't a lot of exposure to business or other aspects of tourism. But I always found myself loving to go on childhood trips, whether it was down to Florida, to Disney, or going up throughout Michigan. And my favorite parts of those experiences were actually staying in different hotels. And so I loved the idea that you could be on someone else's vacation for a living, and knew that when my mom and dad would have our grandparents or friends over, I would always want to set up their little guest bedroom as a hotel and make it feel like a hotel. And so I was either going to be a hotel person, I knew at that age, or I wanted to be a commercial airline pilot. My grandfather worked for United Airlines, and I always thought that was a fascinating career. Or I actually wanted to be a high school principal in the inner city to be able to give back and to help educate the next future generation. And so it was always going to be one of those three. And I think through a process of elimination, I found that hotels is where I was ultimately meant to be. And when you look back throughout my childhood, that's exactly where I always wanted to be.
Yeah. Was there a particular event or something that said, because those are pretty, the things they have in common, and you didn't say this, but I'm seeing it. It's like just service, right? Like providing service, whether it's transporting people somewhere, education, or in hospitality. But was there an event or something? Was it the Las Vegas trip? Like what made you decide that hospitality was the thing?
I always thought it was cool to work, to be able to work somewhere where you could really just make someone say, wow. Like, and I don't think I would have been able to get that. People expect a plane to land safely. People get, some get excited to go to school, some don't. I was never a good student, like book smart wise. So I just knew that hotel was probably where I was meant to be. But I think some of my earlier memories actually was when we went down to Florida. I was on a business trip with my mom and dad, and the New York Yankees were staying at the hotel that we were staying at for spring training, and being able to play ball with them near the pool, and then having the maintenance guy that was there for the week stop by and say hello, and had a cupcake. We were there celebrating my birthday. I think I was probably like 4 years old. All those kind of little memories made me realize what a special industry it is. And when I would go to take your child to work day with my mom or my father, my mom was actually our school bus driver growing up, so every day was take your child to work day with her. And then on my dad's side, he was in IT for Consumers Energy, which is a big power company in the Midwest, and that was the same job every single year. He worked in IT and as an analyst, and so understood the routine and knew I wanted more routine in my life.
Nice. So
I should say less routine in my life and more every day being different than having the routine every day.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear more about what your days are like. But even before that, take us a little bit through your journey. So I saw you worked at Disney World for a bit. You were an intern there, I think, and then you came to Vegas. So what was that like? So what did you go to school for, and how did you end up in Vegas and at Caesar's Palace?
I actually only applied to Michigan State University. I don't know if that was a good strategy or not, but I had the opportunity to work at a small Holiday Inn Express in Jackson, Michigan. At the time, it was just opening up, and had a really good boss there named Tony Roberts. And Tony really took me under his wing. And I started out in housekeeping. I wasn't very good as a housekeeper, so they moved me to the front office. And then he really took me under his wing to understand every aspect of the hotel. And so by the time that I was ready to start looking at schools and universities, I knew hospitality was really where I was meant to be. And so I blindly applied to Michigan State University, went through hospitality and tourism while I was there for 4 years, and then knew I either wanted to work at Walt Disney World and had the opportunity to intern at Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa my freshman year. That was my first time moving away from home, meeting all new roommates. I had 7 other roommates in a 4-bedroom apartment, but it was a lot of fun meeting students from all over the United States, and had the real opportunity to work for the first big company that was really dedicated to service and creating memories and experiences. And Disney really taught me a lot. It was a phenomenal foundation for me. And then I moved back after that freshman year, back into my sophomore year at Michigan State, and knew after that time and after a couple of tropical storms and the humidity that probably Las Vegas would be somewhere where I'd explore next. And so that's where I really had the opportunity to start refining my networking ability and to start looking at opportunities and experiences and networking within the Las Vegas region, and wanted to explore more. And so, a defining moment for me has been in college, really starting a student organization at Michigan State called the Lodging and Gaming Management Association. And that was really what propelled so many students from Michigan State to move out to Las Vegas, get careers in Las Vegas. And then by the time that it was my time to graduate, I had a really good mentor at the time named Michelle DeTondo. She just got promoted to the chief HR officer position of MGM Resorts International. And we met right before I moved out for an interview at MGM Grand Detroit. And she said, you should try HR for 1 year. And if you don't like it, you can always go back. And I thought, oh my gosh, who wants to work in human resources? I don't want to work in human resources. That's where people go, they get in trouble. They might have like a bunch of memos they have to fill out, a bunch of paperwork. I could imagine there was no more excitement than being in hotels. Why would I want to be in HR? But she said, we're going to start a internship program and a management training program back up, and I'd love for you to go out and recruit for it. And so I had the opportunity to become the first college recruiting manager at MGM Resorts International, and
Wow.
ended up doing that for 6.5 years. And that was a real great opportunity because indirectly I learned so much about people, culture, mergers, acquisitions, consolidations, building centers of excellence, standing up new organizations, departments, experiences. And so by the time that I reached out of that recruiting cycle after 5 years, MGM Resorts was getting ready to open up T-Mobile Arena, and they did not have anyone to run HR for the arena. And so my boss at the time was a great gentleman named Don Gillette, and he said, what do you know about arenas? And I said, I don't really know anything about arenas, but I saw Celine Dion in Las Vegas in 7th grade. And he goes, great, this is going to be a phenomenal opportunity for you. You're going to be our director of human resources for T-Mobile Arena and corporate entertainment. And after opening T-Mobile Arena and many sleepless nights, wondering if employees were going to show up to work on the first day, and training all of them and creating the first big real arena here in Las Vegas of its caliber, it was a phenomenal opportunity to go, oh my gosh, like when I really look at this arena full of 13,000 screaming fans for their favorite concert, their favorite boxing match, or to see their favorite hockey game, and then 700 employees working in here, I thought, this is my time. I really need to get back into hospitality on the operations side. And at that time, I had a great contact that I kept in contact with over at Caesars, and his name is Sean McBurney, and he's now our chief commercial officer of the company. And at the time, he was the general manager of Caesars Palace, and he said, what do you think about coming over to Caesars Palace? And I said, well, I don't know much about hotels, but I can, but I'm an HR person at this point now, but I love hotels. And he said, well, we're going to really shift and transform Caesar's Palace. We're putting billions of dollars into the hotel. We're massively repositioning the operations here, and we would like someone to run the hotel, but really build culture and service back into the operation. And so I started at Caesar's Palace, took a big leap across the street, and had the opportunity to start here as our director of hotel operations. But I really felt like I was in human resources. It was managing expectations, building standards, service journeys, experiences, and really building a team and repositioning the team to be more driven towards service and experience, and not the factory style 2,000 check-ins, 2,000 checkouts. Let's just get through the day. And so that was a new aspect to Caesar's Palace. And that's how I ended up ultimately growing here in the organization. I helped open up our Caesar's Palace in Dubai and had the opportunity to work at 3 of our hotels. Upon a couple restructures, had the opportunity to go support the hotel at Rio in the Cromwell, and also learn food and beverage and entertainment over there. And then I came back here to Caesar's Palace as our vice president of hotel operations, and then ultimately in this role where I've been the last year and a half, which is the assistant general manager role, overseeing the day-to-day operations. So everything has worked out not exactly how I thought it would ever go. And it was a very interesting journey through HR and entertainment and back to hotel operations, but it ultimately made me a better leader.
Yeah, that's an amazing journey. You saw me, I was taking down a lot of notes because a lot of gold in there that people, they didn't pick up. I want to kind of go back to the beginning and ask you some questions to some of this. So one of the things you mentioned was you started a program for where Michigan University
Yes.
would move and get roles in Las Vegas. So I want to learn a little bit more about that. Like, you said you started that program or you became part of that program? And then I want to talk about networking because that's also a big one too.
When I got back to Michigan State after my Disney internship for a semester, I went to Career Services and I asked, what are student organizations for students that want to learn more about hospitality or resorts? And they said, well, we have like the Vending Machine Club of America, we have Club Managers Association of America, or we have the National Society of Minorities in Hospitality, but we don't really have anything for hotel. And the School of Hospitality Business at Michigan State was one of the first hospitality schools. And so it was really funny to me that there was no hotel or lodging club at Michigan State. And I really realized at that moment in sophomore year that if the opportunity isn't there, you have to build it. And so I sat in a hospitality lodging class with another student, and we decided that we were going to build a student organization for increasing overall awareness and understanding of the lodging and gaming industries. He wanted to go into gaming. I wanted to go into hotels. We ended up both moving out here to Las Vegas for various chapters of our career. But that was really the first opportunity to bring students and around into Las Vegas to meet different leaders on the resort corridor here, but then also to build awareness of what careers look like in these integrated resorts. You know, these are massive complexes that are not just hotel rooms, a small all-day dining restaurant and a little lobby bar. These are massive operations with theaters and nightclubs and slot machines and many different restaurants and bars and convention areas. And so to be able to educate and provide that opportunity for students to learn about opportunities here in Las Vegas that geographically we're so far away from anywhere in the Midwest, where there wasn't a lot of casinos or areas where you could learn about that kind of integrated resort industry. That was a really phenomenal opportunity. And bringing students out to Las Vegas was great, but then also bringing leaders on campus to be able to show and share that story more broadly to students so that they could understand if they didn't want to work at a traditional Hyatt or Hilton or Marriott, they could still get a phenomenal career if they worked in one of these big resorts.
Wow. So even then you were really driven, and it's almost like the service mentality. If it doesn't exist, like, let's create something that will not only help you, because it did, I'm sure it helped you in the time, but it helped a lot of other students find maybe something that they loved or realize, oh, maybe this isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it was really great just seeing how many students were really interested in that, and to really reposition that this is not just that old school mentality of what Las Vegas used to be, of 99-cent shrimp cocktail and smoky casinos and little motels. Like, these are massive buildings that are highly regulated, Fortune 300 companies that are running these billion-dollar assets. And I think that was the most fascinating to see so many students' eyes open up to, my gosh, I can have a career in. Within any of these buildings, you have people that care for the fish and aquatics, and all the way down to people on the loading dock that help make sure that we get, 3 to 4 different shipments of fresh food flown in from Italy every week to the loading dock and into the restaurants and to someone's plate. And that was really cool to see how many students were really excited and interested about that part of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's like running a little city.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that I want to get into, like networking. So you did talk about that, and you said you started networking before you even came. So
Mhm.
how did that help you? Like, what was your mentality and your approach toward networking, knowing that you were potentially going to be looking for a role or looking for work out here?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was really interesting is early on, I always saw a lot of people that wanted to just wait in line at career fairs and gamble, really, that was going to be how they were going to get a job. And so you'd see all these students senior year trying to find and rush for a job. And I never wanted to have that approach. And I never wanted to ever be in a position where I'd have to wait in line and make an impression on someone in 30 seconds in order to guarantee what potentially the next 30 years of my life would look like. And so early on, since there wasn't a lot of exposure and opportunity to learn about the lodging and gaming industries, I really spent a lot of time on LinkedIn at that time and really starting to build relationships that way, since I was so far away, 3 time zones difference, and really just opening up very simple, like e-invite messages to executives that either I thought had really cool companies that they worked for, or great jobs or great careers that I might be interested in someday, or a role or an opportunity that might be something that I want to explore or roll out. And so I'd literally just write a message saying like, hi, my name is Adam Miller. I'm a student at Michigan State University. I'm excited about the lodging gaming industry. I'd love, to treat you coffee or have a 15-minute conversation with you just to learn more about you and your career. And 8 out of 10 times people would respond. The other 2 are either one of them might have been too busy or one of them might not have ever checked their LinkedIn. But I was really surprised early on how 8 out of 10 leaders would be willing to sit down and have 15 minutes of conversation with you. And to me at that time, those 15 minutes were like learning a semester's worth of knowledge at Michigan State. And I got that in 15 minutes. And so it became really, really great to continue building that, not only for myself, but really the Lodging Gaming Management Association that we had at the time, and to be able to start building opportunities for students to either have a site tour or have an executive come to campus, or really just to learn more and be a point of contact at that particular property. And that was really how I started building my relationships sophomore year into senior year, and getting to reach out to these leaders once or twice a year and give them updates on how school is going or projects or the next trip we're going to plan out, and then bring them students from Michigan State University that were fully suited and excited about the industry. And then that is really how my relationships have propelled from that perspective. But without that networking, and not just networking, but really building really great relationships with people over time, I say that was probably one of my first real keys to being able to unlock opportunities on the Las Vegas Strip.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone is listening that is earlier in the career or in university, that is a fantastic approach. I have to coach executives about building their network, and the fact that you as a college student had the foresight, and what executive is not going to want to help college students? Like, college students reach out to me all the time. I'm happy to talk about the entertainment industry, about technology, about whatever it is. It's our chance to give back, right? And we also put ourselves in that position. If I was in college again, I would love someone to give me 10, 15 minutes of their time. It's no surprise to why you probably were able to find this success. The other thing I wanted to jump into is mentorship, because this is another thing that people underestimate. And you mentioned Michelle, Tony. You mentioned, if I didn't get to write everybody's names down, but you mentioned all these folks who were mentors to you at some point in time. So talk about a little bit the role mentorship played for you, and then also how you pay it back for any mentees that you take on.
Yeah, very good. Well, one thing that I realized that was going to be critically important for me, not having parents that were in this kind of business or line of business, was being able to build a support group or like a board around the table, if you will, of different leaders at different stages of their career or different parts of the industry, they're going to help me make well-rounded decisions, knowing that I didn't have a lot of family out here, no family out here, just coming out here for the first time. And so I really, fortunately was enough to be able to start really selecting people that I would make some big career decisions with, or life changes with, or any kind of decision that was going to be a big decision I was going to have to make at any point in my career. I'd have a small group around the table. And so these mentors were former, like, you know, a former vice president of casino operations on the Las Vegas Strip. Never really wanted to go into gaming, but it'd be great to understand his side of the business to make me a better hotel leader early on in my career. One was a former Four Seasons leader that was with Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts for 45 years. And he shared a lot about how to be polished and professional and how to eat with the right silverware and how to order properly and how to give you all of those soft skills and how to properly tie a tie and how to properly fit a suit and how to properly polish shoes. And it was a lot of hard, really tough feedback to receive. But early on, though, he was a mentor from a professional but personal aspect to make sure that I presented myself well always. And I also had a lot of great leaders that were in the technical aspect of the business in hotels, resorts, that were able to help me as well. And so I would use these mentors to discuss everything from career decisions, companies that I would be looking at, what I should be doing in the first 90 days in a job, how I should manage conflict in the workplace that might come up, or some complex business challenges that I was going to have to solve in front of me. And I noticed that these individuals were always constantly great sounding boards before I ultimately helped make a decision. And I always felt very confident about making that decision, especially early on in my career when you have to start making some bigger decisions, just knowing that I had 20, 30, 40 years of experience of a sounding board around me that were helping me to make sure that I was clear in my decision making or clear in my thoughts about how to proceed with this certain road, fork in the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% ascribe by having mentors. Like, I wouldn't have gotten to where I was without mentors. And I took the same approach you did, right? They didn't have to be within your discipline or even within your organizational hierarchy. It's better that they're not, because it'd be a few things. One, like your point, perspective. They're going to give you a different perspective and they'll teach you skills that maybe you didn't think you needed. And the other thing is, I always talk about this idea of relationship currency. So I don't know if you had mentors within your organization, but the rooms that I didn't have access to, so like the C-suite rooms at Netflix or the VP rooms, they all knew my reputation. They knew I was curious, they knew I was driven, and they knew what I was capable of because I sought them out as mentors. So I think I could attribute a lot of my success to that, to building those relationships and asking questions and being curious. And to your point earlier, taking the risks, the calculated risks that helped me be successful. So yeah, if this is all gold for people who want to learn how to accelerate their career, all these things that you're doing. Now, the second part of that is, how are you now paying it forward? Do you take that same approach with people that come talk to you? So how do you play now the mentor taking on the mentees?
Yeah, I had a great college mentor in town, and he now is the chief operating officer on the Las Vegas Strip. And he always picked up the phone for me. And I thought, this is a gentleman that runs 7,000 rooms on the Las Vegas Strip, and he's always willing to take a call from me through his secretary or through an email. And I always thought that was really, really special. And so my goal is always to really pay it forward to students. So I'm actively involved in the School of Hospitality Business at Michigan State, and over here at UNLV within our backyard of our community, or the Nevada Hotel and Lodging Association, or some other organizations that are really professional development organizations for students. That is something I'm absolutely passionate with, just to be able to pay it forward, knowing that I've had so many great experiences and have been able to get to where I am today solely because of those mentors and leaders that have taken time for me. And it's really great, because I think one thing I didn't realize when I was in that stance as a mentee was that I learned just as much from my mentees now about what's going on, or how they think and process information, or how they would look at the industry. And so I indirectly learn a lot from that too. But I have many different mentees, and many of now are running different hotels or directors in big companies around town. And it's been really exciting watching them grow in their career, and really, really, really great when they still reach out or give a call or a text and tell me about their next promotion opportunity or where they're moving to next or an operation that they're getting to support and run. And so it's been really neat to be able to support a wide variety of students that have been successful.
Yeah, I mean, it feels good, right, to be able to help other people be successful and create the life or career that they want. Um, so you have run, and you are running enormous organizations. And even from your story, it sounds like you had to do a lot of change management, culture shaping, and all those things. So how did you approach that? So for folks that maybe are just starting their leadership career and maybe have teams of 5, 10, smaller teams, what do you think about and how do you approach reshaping culture that maybe doesn't fit what you want now, but you want to, it sounds like you create high performance and like empathetic cultures just by the way you kind of talk about uh, your leadership and how you've grown. So how do you do that with these large organizations?
Yeah, one thing I really love to do, it's a passion of mine, is really traveling around to different hotels or resorts. I have a full list, and I even have like a room key collection and glass jars that I have at home that is just a part of my everyday enjoyment of going and traveling and seeing different parts of the world. So I do a lot of data collection and really taking a lot of pictures and archiving different things that I like, what I don't like, things that team members, associates, employees, whatever you want to call them, do really well, companies that do that well, companies that don't do that really well. And so that is a personal passion of mine, is to like really study brands and organizations and go experience them, especially hotels that are so iconic. They have had many years of and decades of history, and how do they stay relevant today? And so that is one of the aspects of it. Number two, it really comes from like the top down. What do our leaders want to see, and how do they want to move the company forward? And one thing that I've really enjoyed is not working in five-star hotels or five-star arenas, but really building five-star hotels and building five-star arenas. And so with that being said, taking organizations that just have one or two different little things wrong, and not necessarily wrong, they're doing a million things right, but just two or three opportunities to really tweak something. It's usually not having to break something completely, but just tweak or find a way to make things more efficient, have been really, really successful in helping to really change organizations. But I think it really comes down to being able to understand what the business problem is in front of us today, what we're trying to solve, utilizing some data and research and what that could look like, doing a lot of conversations and a lot of interviewing with key stakeholders, whether it's leaders, team members, peers, to understand really what a desired outcome would look like, and then being able to really start working with a team to really lay out a vision and really build what a future success story could look like, and then working backwards from that. And I always like to start with what a success story would look like so that I can articulate that to our leaders and make sure that sounds like something that they really want to see as a desired outcome. And then I can sell that to our leaders around the table, or build a team around the table that has the knowledge, skills, ability, experience, passion, background, or interest in building something like that, and then starting moving that forward. And so I think right now we're building a brand new VIP hospitality team. And I think this is my 7th or 8th team I've built in Las Vegas. And I've really, really enjoyed that part of the business because it is so complex. There's a lot of stakeholders involved, but you get to see an immediate change or improvement or an enhancement to an organization once it's implemented. So I'm a very impatient person, but I find that this part is really successful when you're able to add those elements, find a team around the table, and then start just building away.
Yeah, absolutely. Building is one of the most fun things to do. In my career, this is something that I love to do the most. I was okay as an operator, but building was the thing that I love to do the most.
Yeah.
So you've had a wonderful career, and we've talked about like a lot of the decisions you've had to make. But what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to face? Either is moving here or challenges that you had to face along your career.
Yeah, I think a lot of times around my career, some of the challenges were joining companies that might not have understood who I was or what my intent was or why I was here, and having to build a lot of rapport very quickly and understand uh, who is going to help um, move a company or an organization or a department forward and who is really resistant to that. And then just starting to surround myself with those that believed in the vision and the mission. And so I find that, coming to some of these bigger resorts that were well established, had a lot of tenure, and had a lot of perspective of how they wanted to see the building ran, or in a lot of cases, they might not know how a building should be ran because they have heard so many different mixed messaging over the years or through different mergers or acquisitions. That was something that was really something for me that took me a long time to understand how to really be efficient at building credibility quickly so you can get rapport and then get the performance. That was something that was a really big challenge. I think another big challenge was just going to so many different new businesses, going from HR to entertainment, where I did not have any knowledge. I didn't really have any experience in. I only had leaders that believed that I could do it or saw the potential. That was challenging, learning different business segments that I might not have studied in school or had experience directly in, and having to relate and then call mentors or call different contacts to get their perspective of how they would see something or how they would navigate something was really, really challenging. But ultimately, by the third time when I got back to hotels and never run a big hotel in Las Vegas before, but having that experience of doing that already with HR and entertainment kind of helped me get there quicker. Those are probably three of the biggest hurdles of just learning new businesses that I never would have imagined being in, or probably in a million years would never forget about, just because they were so impactful to me.
Yeah, it has to be. It's like equal parts scary, but equal parts exciting, right?
Yeah.
Because like I've never done this before, but hey, I've never done it before, so
Mm-hmm.
let's go do it. Um, for folks that are listening, that first part, the building rapport, how did you approach it? So say you had to build rapport with like a C-suite executive. Like how would you approach that?
I would try to do as much studying on an individual that I could just to understand their perspective and their thought leadership at that level. I usually like to start building rapport very quickly with the frontline teams. And what I find in these bigger hotels or bigger resorts or bigger entertainment complexes is the most senior tenured team members are not the most resistant. Those are the ones that like to see things the way they used to be. And whether over time a company changed or a direction changed and things kind of might have been taken off the priority list, being able to understand their history and their experience and what their belief was of what success could look like here was always very impactful. And then really doing a lot of informational interviews and roundtables and informal chats and spending time really building those relationships in back of house and eating in an employee dining room and just sitting down at a table and getting to know someone and their history and background. That to me was always the bigger drivers. So I'd first spend the first 40, 50 days never really talking about what I see this place or this building or this venue to be, but really more of like understanding the people and culture component and the ways in the teams work together. And then that really helped me take notes on the back end. And then when I would go to meet with different senior leadership, I could share my perspective of what I'm hearing in the operations, share a little bit about my recommendations on how we should approach that, get their buy-in, and then start moving forward. But that taking that time to not shortcut, trying to just build out a bunch of PowerPoint decks and here's what I'm going to do, but really spending time with the team and making sure that they can also educate you and share their stories and perspectives of leaders that have tried different things and what might not have worked and what was very successful just helps you get further along faster. And also probably the more fulfilling part because you really get to hear individual stories that have dedicated sometimes their entire lives to this industry or to this building or to this venue or to this department and want to make sure that they're heard and seen and able to articulate that into some measurable areas of opportunity that you can grow and we can sometimes maximize or totally pivot and do something different with.
Absolutely. I think some some people younger or earlier in their career, I don't want to say necessarily younger, but maybe early in their career, they think coming in hot with like all these ideas are the way to go. But
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like that's the same way that I would advise and I have approached it is
Yeah.
because the people around you, one, they have to be your advocates. If they're not, they're going to be your detractors. So getting to know them, getting to understand why, and then also pulling the thread on what their why is and how you can help them improve whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. So then the goal is this puzzle you get to put together that everybody gets a little bit of what they want. And maybe not everybody will get exactly what they want, but everyone will get a little bit of what they want while the business is successful at the same time. So love that approach. People need to take that approach more often. Coming in hot, if anything, I've seen people come in hot and you're like, oh, I've seen this story before. They want to leave their mark and it doesn't always end well.
I think the other thing that is really important and what you said kind of made me remember it is really spending time in the operations, working the hours that the team members work. And so not a normal 9-to-5 schedule or a Monday through Friday, and really being there on the nights, weekends, holidays, and in the operations. And I try not to host any meetings in my office. I try to go to the areas of the department so that they see and understand right away that I'm with them and in the operations with them and trying to understand as quickly as I can their worlds has been really, really impactful when you take on some of these newer, bigger tasks. And then they get comfortable with you in the operation and they're willing to share more with you and you get to see a candid, real side of them. And I try to always remember that these are not just team members. These are moms and dads and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles that all really want the same thing, which is to have a better life and or to make an impact in some way that is meaningful to them. And so being in those operations with them as much as possible is certainly been an absolute success.
Yeah, because they get to know you as a person, as a human, and know that you're not there just to change for the sake of change. You're there to better whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. One thing I used to always like to do is I never would walk over a piece of trash in any office. I would pick it up because I want to be the model and I want to show that I would never ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. So if I'm going to pick up trash and I ask you to edit this thing or create this thing, I'm not asking you something that I wouldn't do. So it's a great way to get respect and also just for people to trust your intentions.
Totally.
So glad you brought that up. Thank you for doing that. Okay. We can talk forever, but I think I don't want this podcast to run too long. Maybe we can have you on again in the future. But knowing what you know now through your career, through Jackson, Michigan, through college, Disney World, your Detroit and Vegas, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self? And it sounds like your younger self was pretty driven, but what advice would you have?
Looking back now, and just 2 years ago, I got to go back to Korea for this first time to see where I was born and the adoption group and agency and the orphanage that I lived in for a little bit. Really came back to understanding my full life from the very, very, very beginning that I never had access to or understanding to. And, only until a couple of years ago did you have a DNA swab you could even understand if you really were from that place. And I think one of my takeaways flying back from that journey and seeing where I grew up or could have grown up was just how important it is to take risk to go travel to somewhere new, learn a new culture. Maybe it is taking the first risk to try a different job or an opportunity. The worst thing that could happen is failure. You just get up and try again. Or maybe it was moving away from Michigan, where all my family continues to live to this day. And I don't think anyone in my family has actually moved outside of the state, if not out of their city or their county that they grew up in, and move out here. And I think all of those different opportunities, or saying yes to going to help open up the Caesar's Palace in Dubai at the time, whatever it might have been, or saying yes to working at one of our entry-level hotels or one of our smaller hotels, or taking on a department that necessarily did not have a clear roadmap of what success was going to look like. And there was a lot of risk if that did not work well. All of those opportunities were all risk. And a lot of times, even before the risk, you're always telling yourself no, or other people are telling yourself no, that you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. And so I find that overcoming those series of no's and some of that self-doubt, but then also saying yes to the risk and running towards taking risk, calculated risk, or getting a sounding board to help you if you really feels like, is that too big of a jump for me, have all been really, really impactful and really helped me understand exactly that was going to be the only way. If you really want to grow in your career, that's going to be the best and most efficient way in doing it, is by taking those risks.
Absolutely. If you don't take risks, how far do you know you can go? Right?
Yeah.
Because if you're not taking risks, if you're taking
Mm-hmm.
half steps, you never really know your full potential because you're not allowing yourself to get there. Right? So that's what I love about that. Your approach of never settling for no and always pushing the envelope and taking the risk.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is they're always chasing a fancy company or a fancy title or a fancy paycheck. And really, if you look down deep dark inside of who you are as an individual, if what you're really meant to do, and for me, it was just writing down a lot of things that made me happy and things that I really didn't like to do, or things that I really enjoyed doing. And for me, at the end of the day, whether I work here or John Deere or Target, I really found at the end of my day, my life and why I'm here is really to improve the lives of others. And this hotel allows me to do that from a guest perspective, but then also from a team member perspective, whether it's through product, process, or some other people component here. And I find that mission has helped guide me in my life of what I do next, personally and professionally, and has really opened my eyes to making those risk calculation much clearer now that I know really what I feel I can impact this world with the most easily or efficient way as possible.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like, it's not often you meet people who feel like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I'm so glad to hear, and it makes me feel good to hear that you're fulfilling what you want to in the way that you want to do it, and we go back to what we talked about at the beginning. You're like providing a service to people, to thousands and thousands, if not millions of people over the course of your career. One last question, and it can be a book or it can be a movie, it can be a video. But if there's one book or something that helped you along your career, aside from the networking, the mentoring, those kinds of things, maybe a book someone can go pick up. Was there something like that that really impacted your life that you could share?
I was recruiting at a conference one time, and there was this author named Steve Pemberton that wrote a book called A Chance in This World. And he ended up being the CEO of a big pharmacy company. But one thing that was really impactful was talking about growing up in a childhood and maybe not having the very, very best life, or having a lot of challenges throughout life, and how he overcame that as a young boy to be able to get to where he is today. And his perspective looking back, I thought was really interesting. And while certainly our lives might not have been the same growing up directly, what I found was really inspiring was just how anyone can turn their lives into anything they want it to be if you just do it and just push for it and dream about it and think about it and work towards it. And just all those little steps over time, every step in that direction of where you want to be, not who your parents want you to be, not who your boss wants you to be, but who you really want to be, was very eye-opening and a defining moment in my life that, my gosh, this is the right thing to do. And wherever you think you're meant to be or what you want to do, it's just one more step forward in that direction.
Fantastic. I'm going to have to read that book. I haven't read it, so I wrote it down. But Adam, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy person, so this means a lot for us to have you on the show today. Really appreciate it. Any closing words that you want to give for the audience before we wrap this thing up?
No, thanks so much for having me. It's been great being able to share this journey so far that I've been on. And anyone that I can ever assist or support, please feel free to send my contact information. I'm happy to help any way I can.
Cool, right on. And if it's okay, I'll put your LinkedIn in
Perfect.
the show notes. Cool.
Sounds good.
Right on. All right, everyone. That is it for this episode. Thank you again, Adam, for being on. This has been the AAPI Leadership Lab. We will see you next time.